Howdy, everybody. To the collective. We have another fantastic show. What was that?
Too fast.
Too fast? Really? Oh, man. We've been having some clipping issues with the audio and the little video that I play as the intro, so okay. I thought I had enough time. I guess not. Let me get into the preamble before I do anything else. While I'm doing my preamble, make sure that everybody likes the page, hits the subscribe button, does the notification bell that we get your email every day. And then let me get into this. So none of us, first off, are doctors or medical professionals by any means. So anything we do talk about or say is our experience and what we've learned from around the world. We have June. It is Men's Mental Health this month. So we're going to be talking about all the different facets of men's mental health throughout this and continuously for the rest of the month. Now, if you do have any questions or thoughts, put them up in the comment section. We can put them all up here and read them and discuss them as we go from there. Last but not least, I forgot. I forgot what the last one was. So either way, I think I'm under time, which is great. And yeah, that's right. So we're gonna get some intros here sorted out. Scott, you want to hit us up with a general intro? Let us know who you are, where you come from, all that good jazz.
Okay, sure. I'm the founder of the Rolling Barrage. Served in the Canadian Army for 10 years in the Infantry, Royal Canadian Regiment, Canada's senior regiment. Just thought I'd mention that. I did a tour in the former Yugoslavia back in 1992, Roto Zero, and came home, knew I was a different person after that, like most of us, and got deeply entrenched in mental wellness and so on for veterans and now for first responders as well. I've been to Ottawa a number of times, spoken with the parliament there and about mental health issues and specifically post-traumatic stress and operational stress injury. And written a book about my tour over there, did a documentary for History Television, and here I am.
So one or two things, no big deal. And John, give me a little snippet of who you are, where you come from, all that good stuff.
All right. Hey, thanks. Yeah, John Gronsky, served in the Army for 40 years, retired as a Major General. And some of the key assignments I had, served in Lithuania back in 2000 for a year, which was pretty interesting. It was just 7 years after the Lithuanians regained their independence from the Soviet Union, so interesting times over there. Commanded a brigade in Ramadi, Iraq in 05 and 06, pretty violent time there, and just had the honor to serve with some just remarkable soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen over there. Commanded a 28th Infantry Division, which is a Pennsylvania Army National Guard division, and then spent the last 3 years of my military career as one of the deputy commanding generals at U.S. Army Europe. When I retired in 2019, I started a leadership consulting company. I do a lot of leadership training for law enforcement, which has a very similar culture to the military. And also for businesses, I'm still involved with doing leadership training and presentations for the Army as well. And I'm just happy to be with you all today.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. Shaun, you got any questions right off the bat?
No. I understand that we are jumping into the long game, no?
Yes, indeed.
Well, it looks like we've got some folks who've got some gray hair, so we should be able to talk about the long game.
That's exactly what I was thinking today when I was trying to figure out what to talk about this morning. But let's dive right into it. The concept of the long game, being able to play in depth or being able to utilize the information at a later date rather than just requiring instant gratification. I think it's something that we, especially as young men, we struggle with. At least I know I did, even now, but especially when I was 20, 25, I really struggled with that immediate gratification. I wanted stuff right now, got to be right now, versus deferring or putting in extra effort to get something later on. And so the first question I guess I have is, do you guys still see that in the younger generation? Is that something that you guys eventually learned how to step out of, or has it been an innate sense since you were young? I'm going to start with Shaun. What do you think?
Well, so I'm 60 this year, fellas, and we all look to be about heading in that same general direction of 60-ish. By the looks of it, John, how old are you?
I'm 67.
Okay. And what about yourself, Scott?
Oh, I had him.
57, 56.
Sorry, had you moved?
Oh, there we go. I'm still a young pup here at 56. So
Okay. So we're
pretty
all
good. Thanks,
kind of
guys.
hanging around those late 50s, early 60s kind of thing. Okay, except for John, who's mega old. So that's an important aspect of this conversation, I feel, because my generation, I was born in '63, and so or maybe my life and my generation, I didn't have much. I didn't expect much. I never, I didn't get used to the idea of instant gratification. Everything that I ever got when I was a kid, I had to earn, and it was earn it the hard way. And so when I joined the military, I was already used to working hard and understanding that if I wanted something, it just didn't appear magically in front of me on a silver platter. And so my military career reinforced that all of the things that I wanted to earn took a lot of hard work and took a lot of time. And so when I finally reached tier one, I think I could look backwards at that point and realize, that took a lot of effort to get to the starting line of tier one. Now I don't even know where this is going to go. So then I was looking further forward into the unknown long game. My careers have since after I left JTF2 have since reinforced this notion of the long game. And when I left the teams, I was trying to figure out how to do sort of a tier one approach to life or to the careers that I would get involved in. And I established what I probably defined as the ultimate long game for me. So anything that I took on, any hobby, we'll call it mountain biking as an example, I established immediately it's going to be a minimum 10-year project. So anything that I engage in seriously, I instantly allocate a 10-year project to it, just like this podcasting thing. I think I've got about 8 years of it left now, unfortunately. And so I set a minimum standard of I'm going to give it 10 years, and then I'll see where it goes from after that. And so now at 60, I can look back at all of those 10-year projects. Some of them are 12 years long. Some of them are 7 years long. Some of them are 23 years long. And I now much better understand what truly the long game means versus when I was just 20 and 30 years old. It's hard to understand long if you have never played a lot of long games.
Great point. John, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of grew up in the same era as Shaun, and a lot of the same stuff. I remember taking a bath in like a metal corrugated tub, and stuff like that. And I always tried to seek out things that were kind of challenging and tough. That's why I like to play football in high school. That's why I joined the Army. It was about looking for a challenge. One thing I have noticed about many people from, let's just call it the current younger generation, is it seems as though a lot of the folks who are like 22, 23 years old want the same things that took me 40 years to earn. They want it like immediately. And I always find that kind of interesting. But, I really think it comes down to trying to be a resilient person, and also self-discipline is a big key part of this. And some people think that, if you're a self-disciplined person, meaning putting off gratification, to the future, so you could work on some of the fundamentals you have to work on today. Some people think, that's takes away freedom. Actually, I think if you're a self-disciplined person, it actually provides you more options in life. And at least I've found it that way as I proceeded through my years. So that's the thoughts I'd like to share at this point.
I like that. Scott?
I would say that the fact that we are here at this point in our lives shows that we are part of the long game. We've kind of mastered that part to this point because we're still here, and we're not necessarily looking for instant gratification. I recall, and this is just a quick story that relays that message. When I was a young soldier, the chief of defense staff was still a young second lieutenant, and he had a conversation with me about how I was going to go places. And in the Army, I was a lifer, and unfortunately, I only served 10 years. But that's where, short term, I was looking 10 years, 20 years, I was going to make a life out of it. And that didn't work out for me. Fast forward to 2019, and I'm standing with the chief of defense staff, and he says, Casey, I always knew you'd be a leader in something. You'd always finish a monumental task. And so the rolling barrage has been that long game for me. We're in our 7th year this year. And, just being here and being able to look back and say, the chief of defense staff and I, former chief of defense staff and I was just a young corporal and he was a second lieutenant, and then 25, 30 years later, I get that compliment. So that's not instant gratification. That's something that took 30 plus years to get. So, and I wasn't looking for it. So that's
like that.
Yeah.
And there's actually a critical message in there that ties into this overarching theme, and that is you may or may not ever get validation on the fact that you played the long game. But if you do get validation, and even if it's just a almost inconsequential blip to most people around you, for a person in a particular setting, just like yourself, with that maybe nod 25 years later of, man, you really did turn out to be something. And I'm loosely paraphrasing that. That little nod from the right person decades later is enough to make all of those decades worth it. And so it's an important distinction between constantly wanting to be 40 years into the game within your first year and desperately needing validation versus being 40 years into the game, never needing any validation. And the moment that you get one tiny little nod, just one over all of those years, only one, if you only get that one, that's the one that makes it all worthwhile. So it's two interesting validation generational differences, and it's two interesting generational long game determination differences.
Yeah, and speaking of validation, I think where I get the most, I guess, fulfillment out of validation is when I get validated by people who used to work for me rather than people that I used to work for, if you know what I mean. I mean, to get validation from people that you used to lead or people who followed you rather than people you followed, to me, is just a very fulfilling thing because, as leaders, we do try to put the welfare of our followers ahead of our own. And when you hear someone come up to you, a couple of years later and say, hey, thank you for your mentorship. And you didn't even realize you were mentoring anybody, but maybe because of your example, or maybe because of something you said and you didn't even realize you were into a mentoring type of situation at the time, people, got something from it. And that's, I think, fulfilling for me, as well as I'm sure many other people.
So, John, I have a question for you. I'm sure that you observed the pattern many times over your career where someone either that worked for you or you worked for, you would get some form of validation. It seems to me, just like myself, you prefer that kind of validation through the context of leadership related or making someone a better human being, we'll call it. What were the kind of validations that really stood out to you? And they may not have been massive or minor. I'm not going to contextualize it. What were the things that stood out for you as, wow, I either needed that or that really left an impact?
Yeah, and I think it's just people that I run into who I haven't seen in a long time, or maybe some people who reach out to me now and then on social media who maybe tell me that I made some type of impact in their life. And I didn't even realize that. I mean, some of these people, you didn't even realize that you were doing that. I remember I was visiting a soldier at Walter Reed after we came back from Ramadi. And I was still serving in the military at the time. And this NCO comes over to me from an active component unit who was task organized with us, and he saw the patch on my shoulder, some, my name tag, and he said, "Hey, I just want to tell you that your brigade really took care of us." And, not necessarily that I took care of anybody, but our brigade did. And that really made me feel good, because he didn't have to say that. There was nothing in it for him to say that. But just hearing something like that provides me personal fulfillment. Like, okay, doing the right thing really mattered to somebody, and you realize how good that was in somebody's life. It made a difference, and it made an impact in somebody's life.
So I'm just going to tease the details out just a touch. Is it fair to say that in that moment you appreciated that validation more so because the individual was referencing the team rather than referencing you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Because let's face it, leadership is not a solo role. Really, leadership is really all about team. I mean, if a leader can't bring a team together, the leader is not going to accomplish anything at all. So yeah, I think it's because he was referring to the team is what made it more of an impact for me.
Yeah, good man. And one final nuanced question. Is it possible for you now to separate or distinguish between someone referencing a team effort and that's the validation and that's what you appreciate the most? But is there a moment in your life where someone validated just you, just you all by yourself or something? And maybe could you make a comparison between those two on how it makes you not feel, but how you consider these sort of things?
Well, I guess in both situations, it validates me where I felt like, okay, I did something right. Whether it was referring to a team that either I led or I was a part of, or if it was referring to me personally. I mean, I could tell you just a real quick story if you want. I don't want to monopolize the conversation here, but real quick, after 9/11, I had to take 2,000 soldiers over to Europe to do force protection on military bases over there. 2,000 soldiers spread across 4 different countries in Europe during this force protection mission. And since we're over there in Europe, I said, hey, there's not going to be any general order number 1. When you're off duty, if you want to drink, go out and drink. But if you screw up, you're going to have to pay the consequences. Sure enough, 2 weeks after we're over there, one of our soldiers gets drunk, gets in a fight at a bowling alley, throws a German civilian over a balcony, injures that German civilian. I mean, it was a mess. So actually this soldier, was court-martialed, put in a stockade. That happened in September. In December, on Christmas Day, a few months later, I say to my driver, hey, we're going to drive to the stockade in Mannheim, Germany. I want to visit this soldier on Christmas Day. And he was an E6 when he got into that altercation, busted down the E1, spending time in the stockade in Mannheim. I drive over there on Christmas Day. He comes into the visitor area. I was the only visitor there. He was just shocked to see me. And after we made a little bit of small talk and I asked him how he was doing, he said, what the heck are you doing here? I was a colonel at the time. He said, Colonel Gransky, why are you even here? He goes, I embarrassed you. I embarrassed the unit. And I said, well, let me tell you what. I said, you're still one of my soldiers. You're still one of our soldiers. And, I wanted to come see how you're doing. Fast forward about 3 years later, I get down to Camp Shelby, where the brigade that I was going to take command of was training to go over to Ramadi. And I'm walking through the barracks area after I get there, and I see 3 soldiers standing outside of a barracks. One of the soldiers comes running over to me, stands at attention, salutes. I see he's an E4, and he goes, you don't remember me, do I? I go, I'm not sure. He goes, I'm the soldier you came to visit on Christmas Day. And then he looks over to the soldier standing over by the barracks and he says, Colonel Gronsky is our commander now. We're going to be in good hands with him. We could trust him. And it really made an impact of, I was just trying to do the right thing by visiting the soldier on Christmas Day. 3 years later, he still never forgot that. And then he actually spoke up and validated me to other soldiers, which was extremely important. So it just goes to show, you try to do the right thing for somebody, people remember it.
100%.
Awesome.
Scott, you got any thoughts?
Well, no, I think that's one of the most important things is doing the right thing. And it pays dividends long down the road. So well done, sir. That was brilliant. And I know it wasn't done out of, I need to do this because it'll pay me off later. It was, you were doing the right thing. I think that's what most of us should focus on. 9 times out of 10, if we're given that opportunity, it's going to pay off down the road. And not just in the fact that somebody might come up to you and say, hey, thanks for doing that. It's actually going to enhance your being as well. You're going to know that you've done the right thing each time and every time. You've done the mirror test every day. And, you know, that kind of stuff at the end of the day leaves you with that feeling of fulfillment that nobody else could give. That's something that you have to find yourself. So I'm right on board with that. Absolutely.
You know, Scott, you just said something really important. You said, you know, doing something for others. And, you know, we talk about mental health. I know you've been talking about mental health on the podcast here and long game and such. But, you know, in terms of being a resilient person and being able to overcome some of the demons that might reside in us because of our past experiences, I think the best way to become a resilient person is by looking for ways to serve others and looking for ways to reach out and help others. And I think when we focus on helping others, we actually help ourselves internally without even realizing it sometimes. So, Scott, you mentioned that, and I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I agree. It's so important that we find ways to reach out and help others to deal with the stuff that we're dealing with. It takes a lot of strength to actually put yourself out there and become that person that is willing to say, hey, something's not right here, or something is very right here, and I want you to be the recipient of something that you can build in yourself. And I think that's the key part in all of this stuff, is that all of our building blocks that we try to do for others, we're actually building ourselves at the same time. And as you pointed out, resilience comes in the long run with doing that. Resilience doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. And sometimes you don't even realize you've been resilient until, you know, there's some sort of an action or a reaction, and it goes, oh, wow, I actually made it through that. I can't believe that. And then you can go hey, nice job, kid. You know? So, yeah.
Like that. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
Yeah. So the building a team that cares for each other through leadership by example is such a powerful thing. And it's something that we're trying to do over here on the collective. It's something that we're trying to do on the daily, just digitally in the interweb battle space of trying to reduce the Darth Vaders and increase the Obi-Wan Kenobis. Because, you know, we are in a bit of a battle space right now of good versus evil, for lack of a better term. And I don't want to talk about specific countries or specific players or specific attitudes. I'm just going to keep it really simple. There's a good way to run your life, and there's a bad way to run your life. And if you're running your life in a good way, you're going to lead by example. You're going to positively influence people around you, and you're going to see the positive outcomes of that ripple all around you in a 360-degree sphere, so that years later, you'll see the results of those ripples, but you might not see them today. If you're doing your best today to be cool and positive and make someone smile and not force them to smile, but make them smile in a way that they own the smile. If you can find a way just to be a good dude today, The ripples that you lay down today, you may never see, but maybe your neighbor will see, or maybe the guy across the street will see, or across the town will see. Doing good always creates impact. Whether we get to see the fullness of that impact, just like you saw in the Mannheim situation, that's a rarity that we ever get to see these kind of sequences of events over a long period of time play out, so that you see the positive outcome, which reinforces within ourselves, oh, this does work. Oh, if I do this, then that. These real eye-opening moments where it all comes together and you see the obviousness of how to do it well, it's rare. And so the moment that you see it, you've got to latch onto it, you've got to believe in it, and you've got to execute against it so that others can see that the Mannheim situation, for lack of a better term, is available to all of us all the time.
100%. Any other thoughts on that? I got a couple comments here I wanted to hit up, but anything else?
Just real quick before you get to the comments.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, karma is a powerful thing. I think there's some power in the universe when you do something good for somebody else, some good is going to come back to you. And I don't mean you do good for other people because you're looking for that good to come back to you, but I think that's just the way of the world and the way of the universe. And I think if nothing else, that's a great incentive for people to try to do the right thing and try to look out for other people, because that good is going to come back to you.
Yeah. Scott, you got anything?
Yeah, I'll just say, just because John had mentioned that, and going back to your Mannheim story, that soldier came up to you because you visited him on Christmas Day. So that karma came back to you in the regard that he validated you to the other soldiers. Now that information gets passed down to the rest of the troops, and now you've built that strength within your unit that, hey, we can trust this guy, and we know that he's going to get the job done, and he's going to look after us. So that karma was built, in an instant of you just visiting that soldier in jail there. So well done. And again, you weren't even looking for it; you were just looking after him. So
yeah, that's awesome. Shaun, you got anything else to add before we
hit the comments, buddy?
All right. So we got a couple, and then a question. Tanya says, love that point. Discipline equals freedom may be one of the most important lessons we can learn. I agree 100%. I'm still trying to learn the lesson quite regularly, but
there's two lessons. There's two lessons in respect to discipline equals freedom. There's the first lesson, which is go out, buy the book, read it, and then think that you understand discipline equals freedom, which you don't. Then there's the other lesson, which is discipline equals freedom over a long period of time. Then you'll start to understand how discipline equals freedom. No one understands that statement by reading a book in a day. It just takes years to really, and I mean truly, understand how discipline equals freedom. So if you read the book and if you chant the phrase 10 times a day all week long, you're not going to actually increase your freedom to such a degree that you've just created a new high watermark. That the needle's hardly budged in respect to the long game. The long game of discipline equals freedom is an entirely different thing that requires a big backwards reflection, not understanding that, today will be a little bit easier, or today was a bit easier, or yesterday was a bit easier. I'm talking about, decades ago when I started using discipline equals freedom, I can now understand ... So there's really two. There's the acute discipline equals freedom, and then, for lack of a better term, there's the chronic understanding of discipline equals freedom.
Hey, could I jump in and just
Absolutely
mention something, how this could maybe make an impact on, say, a 19, 20, 21-year-old out there listening to this. And when I talk to young people, what I like to explain to them, if you're disciplined enough to get yourself a job, even if it's a part-time job, if you're disciplined enough to find some type of volunteer endeavor to get involved with, even at the young age, if you're disciplined enough to go, whether it be a university or whether it be a technical school, but to learn something, because a lot of those things do take discipline. What it does is it opens up options for you that you're not even going to realize. These options might become available 10 years down the road. That, just because you, were able to gain people in your network from this part-time job you took on, because instead of hanging out around the house, you decided to go work, or, instead of hanging around the house, you decided to get involved with this volunteer opportunity, and it created some type of networks for you, and it gave you some experience, and that could have opened up doors for you 10 years down the road that you're not even thinking about right now. So when I say, self-discipline provides options, which ultimately provides freedom, I think that's kind of a real way for people to look at that.
Yeah, and I'd just like to reframe what I said based on that. A better way for me to explain it is discipline equals freedom in the day, with an eye towards discipline equals freedom over a decade. So view your goals in the day, but understand where your 10-year project or your 20-year or your 30-year or your 40-year project is taking you, and maintain a form of overarching discipline towards your mega outcome that you're pursuing decades from now.
100%. Scott, you got anything to add to that? No? Good. Okay. Tanya then goes on. She has a question. As a leader, how would you model accepting praise, especially in front of subordinates? Extrinsic motivation isn't sustainable, but getting the nod plus letting it sink in can help with a sense of self-worth. She asks, because the warrior archetype tends to spit out compliments like a vending machine with a crumpled $5 bill. Humility is a virtue, but for someone struggling, that virtue can be a double-edged sword. So let's go back to this question. As a leader, how would you model accepting praise, especially in front of subordinates? John, start with you.
Yeah, I think the best thing, what I've found, and if you're trying to be a humble leader, a lot of times you just don't want to accept the praise. But what I found over time is the best way to handle that is just just say thank you and accept it, and appreciate the fact that somebody found some value in the leadership that you're exhibiting. If you try to kind of put it off, I think in a way you're not paying respect to the person who's providing the phrase if you don't accept it. It's just like gifts. Sometimes you got to accept the gift, meaning that gift of praise, and just thank the person for feeling the way they do, or recognizing something in you that they recognize. So I think just the best way is to simply acknowledge it, thank them, and then just move on from there.
Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with John there. It's good to be humble always. There are so many leaders out there that beat their chests and look at me and I'm going to save the world, and sometimes they are the ones that are running the opposite direction when push comes to shove, because they've tried to prop themselves up, and they get to a point where they can't back it up because they're not that person. So I think humility and being humble is something that is, I think it's part of who we are initially, but you can also foster that, and I think that's an important piece as well. It's just, for me, being humble. I spout off and walk the walk and all that stuff, but at the same time, when it comes down to it, and somebody gives me a compliment, I take it with humility, because getting to where we are and doing the things we do in our leadership roles isn't easy. And so it's nice to have a compliment. Just know how to take it.
Like that, Shaun?
I was really bad at this, and I'm still not that great at it. So if I was getting some praise or a compliment, particularly in front of subordinates or amongst my peers, I didn't want it. This is how I used to work. I just want direct, concise feedback on how to do it better. Don't tell me how I did it well. Let's not waste time. Let's get on with how I can do it better. That's just how I was taught, and that felt right to me. So I'll duck a pat on the back if I can, but you can double barrel blast me in the chest with all of the things that I've done wrong. That's what interests me. And so I was really quite bad at accepting praise. But a couple of years ago, just under 2 years ago, our mutual friend Seb Lavoie, who's a jerk, he said, "Hey man, you got to get better at accepting praise because people are saying nice things and you're kind of duck dodging and diving it, and you just got to get better at it." And I said, "Okay, I will." And so it took me some time to be able to have someone say, "Hey, listen, I really appreciate that," and me being able to say, "Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it." That just wasn't my MO. But now I'm a lot more comfortable with it. But how I got comfortable with it is maybe not how everyone gets comfortable with it. I'll just throw you my workaround for accepting praise. If someone hits me with a bit of praise, I know that it's important for me to respect their praise because they're giving it out. It's like a gift, as John said. I want to acknowledge that gift. But I take the gift and in my head, I turn it into, why was this important to them? What is it that I did that was notable to them that I can recognize within them, and then either replicate that to some degree and start building that for them, or replicate it for others so that I can build it for others? Am I missing anything in this praise that was so notable that I can replicate it easily to improve others? So that's how I was accepting praise, was looking at almost tactically to understand if I could use it, not to weaponize it, but to use it almost as a tool to some degree, if that makes sense.
Like that. John or Scott, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, if I could, I just
Absolutely.
Shaun brings me to a good point there. We talk about people coming up to us and saying thank you for your service, which is a compliment, but it's a broader one. So I think one of the things I've found that I do in this respect is I will say, when they come up to me and say thank you for your service, I'll say it's what we do. So it's actually, I'm deflecting it as an individual thing. I'm making it a broader scope. I'm saying it's what we do. It's not what I do. It's what we do as soldiers and service members. It's what we do. And so when I talk about getting compliments about the rolling barrage or my work in PTSD and mental wellness and stuff within the veteran community in Canada and the US, I just simply say, I have a great team behind me. I can't do this all myself. I appreciate the gesture of saying thanks, but really it comes down to everybody working as a team here, and that's, I think, even when we deal with ourselves singularly in this regard, it comes back down to a team effort. And I say that because John mentioned earlier, mentors. I was mentoring these people and I didn't even realize I was. And so I've reached out to, people that have been in my leadership hub in the beginning. And I've told them, hey, thanks for getting me to where I am today. I couldn't have done it without, following some of the things you've done. So when I take a compliment, it's actually, for me, I'm spreading it up the chain to everybody that's helped me get to where I am. So that's humility and being humble in itself, I think.
I like that.
And I do want to say that there is another side to this humility thing, and I think leaders absolutely need to be humble. As a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago who mentioned, the U.S. Army has 7 Army values, and they said, I think there needs to be an 8th one, which is humility, because humility is that important. But the other side of humility is, I think we have to be humble enough to accept a helping hand when it is offered to us. And I think a lot of us as leaders, we think we're strong. We think we're strong. We think we could overcome anything.
What?
And
we can't.
Yeah. Somebody wants to offer a helping hand. I think a lot of times we have to be humble enough to accept that helping hand and thank people for it, and kind of bring people into the fold, bring them into the team, rather than trying to do everything on our own.
That's a great point. Shaun,
I agree. Yeah. And now I'd like to take that fine comment and build it out in a bit of a different direction, but still relevant to the long game. And I'm going to use the opportunity of today being a PTSD Awareness Day, the 27th here in Canada. I'm not sure if that's the case down in the United States, but certainly it's being spoken about up here in Canada today as part of the overall month of June, which is Men's Mental Health Month. So today being PTSD Awareness Day, holy moly, is that a long game? And I'm not talking about if you've got PTSD, I'm talking about the entire subject. At one point, it wasn't called PTSD. When I was on the teams, there was no such word as PTSD. What was the word before that? Was it shell shock? What was the word before that? And what is the word today? And what will be the word 10 years from now or 50 years from now? The long game. The long game of PTSD awareness. What didn't exist at one point, which now exists, and in the future will look something completely different, perhaps. But the fact remains that over time, individuals and organizations and teams and units and all kinds of institutions have made an effort, some good, some less than good, towards educating, bringing more awareness, more treatments, more abilities to manage PTSD from a time where, again, 20 years ago, there was almost nothing, till today, where there are many options available to veterans, first responders, law enforcement, or anyone else out there who is challenged with PTSD or some sort of mental health challenges. The landscape 2-3 decades ago was pretty bare. But now it's a lot richer in respect to PTSD awareness, and it will be another 10 years from now. So I state all of that to make this point, that sometimes when someone's standing at the onset of day one, I just got told I have PTSD. It seems like there's no solution inside. I'm not sure, what does this even look like? Well, there's lots of people that have managed to navigate their way through the space of PTSD from 2 decades ago or a decade ago, when there weren't all of these tools and awareness abilities available. Now it's in place, so it should act as some sort of positive, hopeful message that if it could be done 2 decades ago to get out of these kind of struggles, you can definitely have a leg up on it today versus back then. I hope that makes sense.
Indeed. Go ahead, Scott.
It makes great sense, Shaun. As a product of the 80s and 90s, PTSD. If you look back to the Vietnam War and the end being around 74, there wasn't even a diagnosis by the American Medical Association until 1982. They created the designation post-traumatic stress disorder, which, I mean, when you think about that, 74 to 82, it took them 8 years to come up with an actual terminology piece for that. And there was so much work that had to be done, and is still being done today in this regard. So for us in the awareness game, the long game of that, from the 80s, 90s, and now into the 2020s, we're talking 40 years. And so for me, specifically 1992 to now, we're looking 32 years, I think it is. And I didn't know, when I went to National Defense Medical Center to get checked out, because I knew something wasn't right after I rotated back to Canada. I was literally sitting in front of a couple of doctors with blank expressions and blank notepads in front of them because they didn't know what they were dealing with. And so, as you mentioned, things now, we have all these tools that were taken, and I use this lightly, so bear with me, on the backs of guys like me and guys from my tour and subsequent tours after that through the 90s in the Balkans. They learned how to develop a curriculum that deals with PTSD and operational stress injury. It's come a long ways in that long game from back in 1914 and 1915, when you weren't prepared to go back up on the front line, so they shot you out back because of cowardice. So, and today, we're still dealing with the universality to service issues, which is something that that's where I'm working towards trying to mitigate, is in that regard, so that we can keep our soldiers in longer, and because they've spent all the money in recruiting and training and so on, and it's like a broken leg. You need to figure out how to fix it so that it's strong enough to carry on with the duty at hand. and lots of troops are capable of doing that. I mean, there are guys still in uniform that are living with PTSD to the maximum, but they're in for the long game. They're getting their 20 years or their 40 years or whatever it is they're looking for. So today, and it's a really good point. Today, there shouldn't be the list of suicides that there are, because there is so much information out there now. There is so much support. There is so much everything out there. The only thing that's lacking is the soldier, or whatever trade they're in, being able to recognize that they need help and actually putting their hand up there and saying, hey, I need a hand with this. They don't want to end their career. So there's that piece of the stigma puzzle. And this comes back to universality of service stuff. If we're actually going to support these people and get them well and well enough to continue serving, then they have to be able to have a way to deal with that. And I think they've come leaps and bounds from where they were, but they still need work. And I'm willing to give my piece on that anytime anybody wants to listen. We need to change the goalposts on that. So that's my piece on that, on the long game there.
For sure. Any other thoughts? I got another great. Tanya's spitting fire over here, so I'm just gonna throw her back up. But she says, "Thank you. Perhaps accepting the praise / gift humbly can mean the standard has now been raised. Best way to thank someone for a gift is to do your best with it." And I really like this, and it actually goes very much into what you guys are saying. I know after my diagnosis with PTSD, this is basically how I tried to run the game for a little while. Was anytime I was capable of something, that was the new standard, and then I would try to beat that standard. And then I would, so for instance, I still don't like crowds, but in terms of long game, I want to be able to go out into crowds. I like to be able to go places with my wife, my kids, and all that good stuff. But it wouldn't have happened had I not taken the time to actually work those daily steps of, oh, I can handle being around 5 people. Okay, cool. That's the standard now. I'm not going below that. Oh, there's 6 people. Okay, I'll work on that. And then 10, and then 20, and then 50, and then 100, and then walking through Costco on a busy Sunday morning, that kind of stuff, where you can, especially when it comes to PTSD, is that, yes, it is a long game. It is a long concept, but it is manageable if you work it in a long-term plan, to say, I think.
Well, it is manageable and it is a long-term game, but where it usually is done wrong is when someone is at the start of the game and thinks, "Oh no, doom and gloom." That ain't a fun game. Like who sits down to Monopoly and thinks, "Oh, this is gonna suck."
Oh no,
that's not a fun game. who wants to play the board game of? So it's for us to spin it to some degree that whatever we're engaged in over the long game has to be almost gamified, so that you can find ways to not entertain yourself. That's a little bit casual, but find ways to engage in a way that intrigues you or puzzles you or challenges you or fascinates you, or I didn't think it could be done this way, so I'm going to try it that way. Whatever the case is, that you need to gamify some of these things to stay engaged in the long game. The long game requires gamification. At the honeymoon phase of the moment that you get told maybe, or get diagnosed with PTSD, maybe the honeymoon phase will be, oh, I need to do this, and this. And by the end of the week, maybe you're all out of the honeymoon phase. And if you never had discipline or focus to engage in it over the long term, maybe you can replace discipline and focus with gamification. Find a way to inch your way on a forward trajectory in a way that not amuses you, but keeps you involved in, okay, next day I'm looking forward to doing ... That's
a great point. John, you want to talk about mindset? I think that goes directly into what Shaun's going after in terms of the long
I mean,
game.
I think mindset is such a powerful thing, and just getting back to this whole PTSD thing, which mindset is certainly a part of. I think we have to continue to remind people that, hey, you're not in it alone. as I mentioned before, be humble enough to ask for help, be humble enough to accept help. And then we also have to look for people just to reach out to. And I just mean, just on a regular day, think of somebody who that you served with, and maybe they never showed any signs of having PTSD, but just reach out and ask people how they're doing. And I think that that helps a lot. But in terms of mindset, I think creating a mindset where the impossible seems possible is so important. I know that's a lot easier say than it is a do for a lot of people. But I'll tell you, there's something I came across maybe a little over a week ago that I've been intentionally doing every morning now, and it's from a book, Miracle Morning. Where every morning I go through a process of, and again, I'm not very good at meditating, but I try to sit in silence a little bit. It's an acronym, SAVERS, SAVERS. The S stands for silence. Just be silent. If you want to call it meditation, you can call it meditation. Affirmations, positive affirmations, that actually works. Visualization, visualizing a successful future for yourself, whatever that might look like in your own world. Exercise, extremely important. Reading, read something. Actually, since I started this little process, I'm actually reading through segments of the Bible. And then journaling is also important. And then I added two things to it, a P and a G, prayer and gratitude practice. And gratitude practice is not only about thinking about things you're grateful for in your life, and I do think that's important, but gratitude practice is also about thinking of times when you did something nice for somebody that they appreciated and how that made you feel. And when you go revisit that feeling, it actually helps you physically, spiritually, emotionally to become a better person. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. Like that. Shaun or Scott?
Yeah, just a real quick one. I think that's super powerful because you don't hear too many strong men talking about engaging in things that make us feel good on a spiritual or emotional level. It's easy for us to explain that we like doing knuckle push-ups, but it's harder for a guy, I think, some guys anyway, myself, I'll speak for myself. It's harder for me to talk about the soft skills, the heart-based skills, the super sensitive skills, the emotional stuff. And I know I need to get better at it. I think we all do. I don't think we ever peak. We never reach our peak of maximum emotional awesomeness. So every day I try to do it a little bit better. And to John's point, it's really powerful. There's years not too long ago that I absolutely didn't understand this concept. But now that I'm engaging in the process of trying to be a little more warm and kinder and gentler, not only to the people around me, but to myself, it's a worthwhile pursuit for sure.
Yeah. Scott?
So yeah, one thing I want to throw in here, and it's maybe a question more than an answer, and I'm just kind of putting it out there for the four of us. You might not be able to get to that level. You might be in such a depressive state that you're not ready to be able to find that little piece in the day that gets you to savers, right? And sometimes that sitting in silence is exactly what happens. So I think a key component, and I'll just put this piece in for me, is physical activity. And I know from having, gone through depression myself and watching my loved ones around me go through them as well, they don't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to get out of bed, or I didn't want to leave the house, or, I'm sitting in my garage now with all my friends at the moment because this is where I'm the most comfortable. And, it's me, myself, and I, my three best friends. And trying to break past that depressive piece where you just don't want to be. I don't want to get into that position in my mind where I have to accept that I'm not doing well. I just want to wallow in this piece right now where I'm at. And so this is where the long game comes in again. You don't have to run right outside and ride your bicycle around the block 20 times to get that energy moving. It could just mean walking up and down the stairs, getting the blood flowing. All of these things, they work on our amygdala, they work on our frontal lobes, they work on everything that gets us into these states. Physical activity is huge. And my state with the Concussion Legacy Foundation, we're kind of working with them now with the Rolling Barrage. I've learned so much about CTE, which is a deadly disorder that comes from not having proper brain health, in that you're receiving all kinds of head traumas. Those things, those head traumas are very systemic in the way we feel every day, because not everything's firing on all cylinders. So finding that brain health is important, and that comes through physical activity. It's getting up, it's walking down the hallway, it's those basic little things that each bit steps into the long game, where you're going to keep moving along to, one day you actually step on the treadmill, or you go outside and go for a run, or you're just walk to the park and back. Those are all key things that help our brains, and that will essentially get us to be able to do savers. And I think that's, if I've tied that back in, and so I guess my question would be for you guys. So our listeners, followers are watching here today have maybe some different insights. Like for me, I go and do photography. Photography puts me into a better place, because I can make a picture look the way I want it to look, and nobody else can do that. That's just me. So I have to walk outside, take a photograph of the sunset or of a tree or a bumblebee or whatever, and I find the beauty in that little piece, and that is so healing for me. So what do you guys do to get to savers, to be able to employ that?
That's a good question. Go ahead, John.
That's a great point. And one thing that kind of encourages me to get out, and I do, thank God, I do like to exercise. It's been just part of my lifestyle forever, so I continue to do that. But I have days too where maybe I'm, call it depressed, and maybe don't want to do the things I should be doing. And I'll tell you, my dog helps me out. Taking my dog out for a walk and just feeling like, okay, I'm responsible for this animal, I've got to walk him, encourages me to get out of the house. And I know, there's many others who use dogs as, support animals, emotional support animals, that type of thing. And for me, that's what works, and I'm thankful for that.
Mm-hmm. I like that, Shaun.
Yeah. So two things. One is pattern interrupts. And by pattern interrupt, I mean, when's the last time you smiled? Has it been this year? And so Chance, did I or did I not challenge the entire interwebs to shoot a photo of you smiling outside in the sunshine and put it on IG and at me? Wake up, smile, because it works magic. And I know dudes that are angry as angry can be, and they can't break out of that anger because they can't smile. They don't even remember how to smell it. Spell it. They haven't seen it. And so pattern interrupt, smile, or some such thing that is way out of your regular operating procedure that day. The second thing is, of course, get out in nature and stare at that big yellow disc in the sky. It is actually its own weird little bit of magic. Once it starts shooting those vitamin D rays into your Mark 1 eyeballs, things start getting better. That routine of get up, stare at the sun, not directly, read a book as you're staring at the indirect sun, make sure that you're drinking a big glass of water right away, first thing in the morning. Don't be pounding your coffee within 2 minutes of waking up. Actually hold off for maybe an hour and a half, 90 minutes, adenosine clearance from the body, a la Dr. Huberman protocol. So, there are routines that you can set in place that will keep you legit on a forward trajectory that you should, after a while, start looking forward to. Man, when I get up, I look forward to the sun, to grabbing the hagakure, to finding something in the hagakure that intrigues me, that I can deeply contemplate for 15 or 30 minutes or whatever the case is. And then look forward to my first cup of coffee 2 or 3 hours after I've woken up. Things to look forward to as part of a positive routine of pattern interrupts that require not being angry, but require smiling at the sun when you look at it.
I really like those. I guess my answer is jujitsu to most things. I think that has been the biggest help for me across the board in getting to a place where I can actually calm. And I think really all of these things come back to being intentional, right? It is just at the very base of it, you have to put some intentionality in what you're doing every day, which I think is fantastic.
Sorry, I did want to draw that out based on the photography comment. The reason that maybe photography is good for some people is because they want to create a little piece of art. But for me, a longtime photographer, average photographer, what photography does for me is make me present in the moment. I'm very in the now. When I've got a camera in my hand and I'm looking to capture the now, I have to be in the now. I'm not creating art as I take that photo. What I'm creating is a capturing moment of me being present in the moment and understanding that I was right in that. Not I'm trying to capture the future or the past. I'm capturing the now because I'm in the now as I'm trying to capture it. So that's what photography means to me.
I like it. I like it a lot. Now we're just over time here. I know, Scott, you got to run, so let's hit some final comments, final thoughts on the long game or anything else that we've talked about. Scott, I'll hit you first.
Just do your best every day. Be humble. Try and smile, as Shaun has pointed out. Those little things make a huge difference in your day, and your days will multiply. Be a force multiplier in that regard. Be your own force multiplier. Make things happen for yourself slowly. Get it to build, and the momentum will be there. I'm proof positive that after sticking a gun in my mouth in 1993, and I'm still here today. Or you can do this. Just takes time.
And we're glad for it.
Absolutely. John?
Yeah, we hear so many things that we should be doing to be a emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically healthy person. And sometimes it becomes overwhelming to people. And I think we all have to realize that you don't have to do everything. Maybe pick, 3 things out that you could work on. Maybe, one of them could be maybe a little bit of exercise. Maybe one of them could be a little bit of journaling. I mean, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter what it is. But you don't have to do everything, but pick a few things out. Try to be intentional about working those as a daily routine, and then maybe expand those things as you continue through. But don't be overwhelmed by all of the things we hear that we should be doing. Pick a few, work them, and if it doesn't work for you, pick something else. But there is hope out there for everybody. You just have to find something that works for you and then work it.
100%. Shaun?
As I see it now, and this is what I didn't understand when I was a young man, but I do now understand it at 60, is I had 2 jobs as a young man. One was to play the long game for me, and one was to play the long game for the team around me. And by that, I mean, now I can look back and realize that the body of work that I put in place, or the examples that I set, or the minor wisdom that I've created within my body of work, that has acted as a catalyst for some younger men that are tracking these kind of things, tracking the long game stories, if you will. And so it's our job to do our best for sure, but it's our job to do the best for everyone around us by living an exemplary forward trajectory that others can understand are available for them as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I caught something that John was saying there as well earlier was you don't have to do everything, but you got to do something. You can't just sit around and do nothing, which is, I think, a key component of everything we've gone over today in terms of the long game. And I can't thank you enough, John. Really appreciate you being on here. You're welcome anytime. Anytime.
I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation. I hope that people listening are motivated, inspired by things that they heard today.
Absolutely. And Scott,
Dude,
again,
I am.
right? I'm all pumped up.
I'm all jacked up right now.
I got work to do. This is good. Good.
I'm gonna go chase
I'm gonna
John.
go do some pull-ups. Okay,
Dude,
There you
I'm
go.
already pulling up.
And Scott, again, thank you again for being on here. It's always awesome to see you. You also have an open share any day of the week. So, you know, as we all learn what the long game is, as we all build upon the body of work that we are actually able to draw upon, we can grow as better people, better humans, and better men. And you can do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.